Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Henning Schwinum with us today. Henning, aka Hen, is co-founder at Vendux. He's also co-founder and executive coach at B Fractional. So we're gonna discuss about the fractional leaderships and fractional roles nowadays. So he's helping growth-minded founders, owners, and CEOs to grow their sales leadership capital by using proprietary perfect match system to identify the ideal sales leader match to their unique business requirement. He's in San Luis Obispo. I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. We're going to have Podpire present this podcast today, which is my podcasting company. If you want to start a podcast, if you want to monetize a podcast, you can go to podpire.com. We have free ebooks for you on how to start an AI podcast and monetize it. And we also have a masterclass to accelerate your learning so that you can start your money generating podcast in 2025. Henning, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Well, thank you, Charles. Great to be here. As you already pointed out, I'm part of the fractional world. I entered it about 5.5 years ago by starting my business Vendux as a matchmaker between companies who need fractional sales leadership and executives who can provide it. And I've since done a few other things. You pointed out the training business, Be Fractional, but I also founded or co-founded an industry association, the Fractional Leadership Alliance. So I'm deeply involved in the fractional industry overall.
Got it. And why did you get involved into that? Because I see like before you've occupied various VP sales roles, advisor roles, for example. How did you get into entrepreneurship?
Well, I always wanted to start a business. I was part of a very early on a startup about 15 years ago. The idea behind it wasn't mine, and I wasn't a founder, even though it always felt to me like I was a founder. And when I was done with my sales leadership career, I initially wanted to be a fractional executive. I felt I knew enough to be dangerous. I knew enough to be out there and help other companies. And when I looked around, I quickly realized that I didn't know enough founders or owners or CEOs, board members, investors, all these groups that would decide whether to bring in a fractional executive. And I didn't know enough. And when I looked for a matchmaker, a agency that could help me find those, there wasn't one. And so with that in mind, I said, let's build this business. What I am missing, others must be missing too. That was my simple product market fit assumption at the beginning.
Right. I had various fractional clients. I do lead gen for them, AI lead gen, and it's always been pretty hard to generate them leads because fractionals most of the time rings with hitting bigger corporations and that you get in the spam. You also need to talk corporate, which is not my strength. You need to do ABM. You need to convince various stakeholders at various sometimes bureaucratic levels of the organization. So let's say that you're a fractional. What would be your strategy to be successful and get, let's say, 1, 2, 3 fractional contracts a year?
Yeah. Well, it's already great that you point out the number, because if you do lead gen for a fractional solopreneur, you don't need to close 100 or 500 or 1,000 agreements a year. On average, fractional executives do 4.4, around about 4.4 assignments a year. So you need to close 4 new ones every year, and that's a small number. And that's always then questionable. How do you get those leads and how you're able to close it? You pointed out it's difficult from a lead gen provider perspective. We work with quite a few lead gen providers, or have worked with quite a few over the years, and found out how hard it is for them to help us and support our business. But back to the question of what is best practice? How can fractional executives be successful? And I think it has a lot to do with not relying on one sales channel. A lot of executives come out there and say, well, I'm well known in the industry, people will come to me. And while that may work at the beginning, that's not a long-term strategy. Also, putting your eggs in the basket of just one provider like Vendux doesn't do the trick either. You need a multi-channel strategy, 3 to 5 different channels to sell yourself, to put yourself out there, and that will create enough inflow to create an even workload. Because while you may think you are the best thing since sliced bread, you have to convince a founder, owner, or CEO of that first.
Right. And for lead gen, what generally do you advise as tactics? Is it LinkedIn outreach? Is it content? Is it all of the above? Are you still bullish on cold email, for example? What lead gen tactics do you advise for them?
So all of the above and much, much more. I would add partnerships to that list of tactics that you mentioned, connecting with fractional executives and fractional executive companies in adjacent segments. So if you're a fractional CRO, align yourself with fractional CMOs, or if you are a fractional COO, align yourself with fractional CFO groups. That's an additional tactic. To your point about cold emailing, that has definitely taken a hit last year, and is far less successful for us. But I still believe in it because the problem is deliverability. It's not getting the attention of a founder. If you word your email right, and they actually get to read it, there is conversion. Now, the problem for a solopreneur is the conversion rate is very, very low, right? You have to send 1,000 emails to get one person interested. And that works for a multiplier business like mine. It's really hard for a solopreneur to rely on that, though, and get the attention of the right kind of founder. But overall, I do believe that cold emailing is still a strategy. Now, of all the measures, for us, the most successful one continues to be LinkedIn. While it is more noisy and more crowded, it still works. You have to do some things right. But if you do, then LinkedIn is still a great place to connect with founders, owners, or CEOs.
Give us an overview of Vendux as a business. How many clients? What are your prices? How much you make from that? And what are your goals for the next year?
A lot of questions. So we have at this point about 900 executives on our roster. Our goal is not to put all of them to work because we work very much client-centric. We operate around the client and always try to find that perfect match for the client. Currently, we have 33, I believe is the number, 33 active clients, 33 active assignments for executives. And as this fractional executive world operates, you typically have a one-time chance to put a fractional into a business because the goal is always that the business grows and the fractional replaces themselves with a full-time. So this isn't revenue that repeats itself. This isn't a repeat type of business or renewal type of business or subscription type of business. It's a one-time shot in that company. Now, the good news is that founders become founders again, that CEOs become CEOs in other companies again. So once you've built that relationship, there is an opportunity down the road with the same decision maker, just a different company, to get into business again.
Love it. And what are your goals in terms of revenue for next year? How do you make your money also?
Well, the way sorry, I forgot about those questions. So the way that our model works is that we take a percentage of the fee that the client pays for the executive. What that does is there's no upfront cost on either side, and it puts all three of us, the executive, the client, and us, in the same boat. Because at that point now, we all have a vested interest that this assignment lasts a really long time. We typically take 20% of the assignment fee, 80% goes to the executive. And as far as number of assignments go and with it revenue for us, we would like to double the number of assignments over the course of this year. And so if we talk again in January of 26, I hopefully can talk about 60 plus active assignments that are ongoing.
What have been your struggle in scaling that business in the past 4 to 5 years?
Well, struggles have initially it was the lack of recognition for the model. So in 2019, when I started, I had to explain in every single conversation what is a fractional executive? What does a fractional sales leader, a fractional CRO do for me? That has eased up a little bit. And for the most part, founders, owners, and CEOs today know what that model entails and how it can benefit them. They still want to know the specifics of how we're selecting, how how this person would integrate into their organization, what type of goals to set for them. But we can help them based on the 5.5 years of experience that we have now.
Right. And the growth that you expect for that business, the fractional model, do you expect it to scale well in the 5 to 10 years? And how would that intersect with AI? Do you feel that fractional workers are more protected from AI since they're better versed, they're more entrepreneurial? Do you feel that will scale in the age of AI?
Yeah. So overall, I expect that fractional executive roles will continue to grow. It's not my statistics, so I can't vouch for whether it's accurate or not, but there are studies out there that say that only 25% of all companies in the US have taken on a fractional executive today. So that means there is large potential for growth. There is a continued influx of startup and scale up businesses, which is a very common place where fractional executives can excel. And founders will continue to be around and start businesses, whether they are in SaaS or tech, or whether they are in more traditional industries or in service businesses. So the amount of work available for fractional executives will continue to grow over the years. Now, the role of AI is one that I think will change the nature of the assignments. What we place are typically strategic sales leadership. So roles like a fractional CRO, fractional VP of sales, maybe a fractional sales director. I still believe that there will continue to be a space and a need for that strategic leadership, because AI, and they have to understand AI. So the need for a fractional sales leader to educate and stay on top of AI developments in their field is absolutely necessary. And it will change the role, but it won't change the demand for that particular role.
Right. And how much in average do the founders and CEOs that pay you pay for their fractional, and how much do you take as a percentage of that?
Yeah, so we tend to take 20%. That is a consistent number. The question of 20% of what is hard to answer, because we're operating industry agnostic. We operate across the U.S. and Canada, and the best point of comparison is always what would a full-time equivalent role make. And that varies greatly. I mean, a CRO in the Bay Area or in New York City, they walk away in tech and SaaS with 5, 6, 700 grand a year. That same role, a sales leader in the Midwest in the construction industry makes $200,000 a year. So there isn't a one size fits all. And those are just some of the factors that come into play. Another one is what level of seniority is required. The question of how intensive is the assignment? Do I need somebody 50% of their time, or 3 days a week, or is 1 day a week enough? So the easiest with all of that is to say, what's the cost in dollars per hour? And just to illustrate the span, we have executives on our roster who will take a role for $150 an hour. And there are others who say, don't bring anything to me less than $400 or $500 an hour. And it's all justified based on all these different criteria.
Right. And on your side, how does Vendux get their client? Do you invest in ads nowadays? Like, how do you bring traffic onto what you're doing?
Well, we already talked about lead gen channels, LinkedIn, cold email, partnerships. Those are our three dominant channels. LinkedIn today is number one, still is. Partnerships are quickly getting up there because there are companies like us out there who do the CMO, CFO, COO, CTO type roles, and we forge partnerships with those, and that allows an influx of opportunities. And because once a company has embraced the fractional executive model, they're open to taking on others. And with that, then the door is open to bring in a fractional sales leader if they already had a great experience with a fractional CFO.
Right. And with that business, is that like what you invest your full time in? Like, what does a day in your life look like?
Well, a day in my life looks like spending all day, every day in conversations. We obviously talk a lot with executives when we onboard them onto our roster. There is a process involved. We want to get to know them really well and build out their profile. Those are conversations. On the executive side, we also have a lot of exploratory conversation, executives who are looking to get into the space, consider us as a channel. And then on the other side with clients, it's the same process. There is a discovery conversation, founders, owners, CEOs who want to explore this for their business. And once they have done the exploration, are ready to go, there are a series of conversations to scope out the assignment, and make sure that we get the right executive matched into the business. So those are the type of calls that I'm involved in all day, every day. And then eventually, sometimes we sprinkle in calls like this one in order to propagate and communicate the idea of fractional executives.
Right. So some would say you're sort of a middleman between corporate and the more agile world, the founder startup world. Is corporate sort of boring compared to the startup world, according to you?
Well, I spent part of my career in the corporate world, and one reason I started a business was because I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I it I felt I wasn't learning anything new anymore. It was the same old stuff every day, and that just did not excite me. That's why I got out of it. Now, in what I do in matching fractional executives, most of our clients are actually in the $0 to $50 million ARR range. So they are smaller businesses. And I would argue that a fractional executive isn't really a fit for a Fortune 5000 company, in particular on sales. So I think of it as a window of opportunity. And the window is there when a sales team is small enough that it can be led by somebody on a fractional basis. If you have 10 AEs involved in a enterprise type sales process, you need a full-time sales leader. The fractional model won't work anymore. That window of opportunity is different for a CFO or for a CMO because companies can grow a whole lot bigger until they require a full-time CFO. But you wouldn't bring in a CFO into a $500,000 business with no sales team. So that's where the fractional sales leader starts earlier. That window of opportunity is earlier, but ends sooner compared to a CFO or a CMO.
Right. Someone's at my door, so unfortunately we need to kind of short. Henning, where can people find out more about you?
Well, go to our website, Vendux. The spelling is here on the screen, Vendux, and it's .org.